Hi guys, this is your girl Wakeji Kamore and welcome to Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. It's a whole new week. Karibuni sana to this new week. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time that you get to listen to this. Thank you so much for tuning in today and for staying with me in this Bible summary. Today, my special thanks goes to my friend Irene, who always gently checks up on me when I don't record a podcast. And I say gently because she texts me something like, "Our girl Wakeji Kamore, how are you doing? I hope that you're well." We haven't received any podcast today, but if you're well, that is all that matters. I know, so sweet. That is what friendship and accountability looks like. Thank you so much, Irene. I love you so much, and may God bless you abundantly. Remember, if this podcast is good for you, it could also be good for someone else. So share it unashamedly. Have the audacity to send it in your WhatsApp groups and send it everywhere else. Let people listen by force. Anyway, all jokes aside, today we are reading Numbers chapter 25, which is a continuation from when Balaam was unable to curse the Israelites and Balaak became very angry at him and did not pay him. And that was at the top of Peor. There's a place called Peor. I like that name. The next chapter speaks about how the Israelites fell into the tricks of the Moabites. And in Revelation chapter 2, verse 14, the Bible sheds some light about what is happening in this chapter. So it says, and I'm just going to read a part of that verse. It says, "Balaam, who taught Balaak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel, so that they might eat food sacrificed to idols and practice sexual immorality." So the Bible shed some light by telling us that what we are about to see happening in Numbers chapter 25 was all Balaam's plan. And because the Bible also records that Balaam was a very greedy false prophet, my guess is that he gave the idea to trick the Israelites to, eating the food sacrificed to idols and to practice sexual immorality. He gave this idea to Balaak so that he could finally get God to curse the Israelites and hopefully get paid by Balaak. But anyway, let's just read on and see exactly what happens in this chapter. So I'm going to be reading from the Message version, and the subtitle of this reads "The Orgy at Shittim." Like it was an orgy, guys. Like it was that bad. Aki, how to Israeli? Aki, gosh, Israelites, what is it? What's your problem? Anyway, this is what it says. When Israel was camped at Shittim, which is Acacia Grove, I feel like there's an estate that has a lane called Acacia Grove. Anyway, the men began to have sex with the Moabite women. It started when the women invited the men to their sex and religion worship. They ate together, then they worshipped their gods. And Israelites ended up joining in the worship of the Baal of Peor. And God was furious and his anger blazing out against Israel. So God said to Moses, "Take all the leaders of Israel and kill them by hanging, leaving them publicly exposed in order to turn God's anger away from Israel." So Moses issued orders to judges of Israel. "Each of you must execute the men in your jurisdiction." Let me tell you guys, this is a word that is really hard for me to read. And for the longest, I actually could not read the word baptized. But you see, now I learned. So this word, I'm just going to leave it there. I know you guys understand. So the judges were told, every man that is under you, every leader that is under you, that has joined in the worship of Baal of Peor, you must execute. Just then, while everybody was weeping in penitence at the entrance of the tent of the meeting, an Israelite man, flaunting his behavior in front of Moses and the whole assembly, paraded a Midian woman into his family tent. And Phinehas, son of Eleazar, Eleazar, or the son of the priest, Aaron, he saw what he was doing and grabbed his spear and followed them into the tent. And with one thrust, he drove the spear through the two of them, the man of Israel and the woman, right through their midsections. That stopped the plague from continuing among the people of Israel. But 24,000 people had already died. So that means by the time God got angry with the Israelites, there was a plague that already started and people were already dying. Wow, and 24,000 people had died before Phinehas took the spear and went and dunged the man and the woman. Anyway, God spoke to Moses and says, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, has stopped my anger against the people of Israel, because he was zealous for my honor, as I am myself. I didn't kill the people of Israel in my zeal, so tell him that I'm making a covenant of peace with him. He and his descendants are joined in a covenant of eternal priesthood, because he was zealous for his God and made atonement for the people of Israel. The name of the man of the Israel who was killed and with a Midian woman was Zamri, son of Salu, and he was the head of the Simeonite family. Like, this guy was actually a leader of a whole clan of Simon. And the name of the Midianite woman who was killed was Cosbi, son of Zur, a tribal chief of the Midianite family. Like, these were actually leaders. It wasn't like people who could. These were actually leaders that had actually walked away from God and started doing their own things. And God spoke to Moses and says, from here on, make the Midianites your enemy. Fight them tooth and nail. They turned out to be your enemies when they seduced you in the business of Peor. And that woman, Cosbi, daughter of the Midianite leader, the woman who was killed at the time of the plague in the matter of Peor. Wow, that's the end of the chapter, guys. I don't know, it could be just me. I find that the Bible has so many examples of men of power and authority being reduced to nothing because of the lust for women. And that is all I will say about that. Tafakari ayo. Anyway, this guy Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the grandson of Aaron, got so upset and maybe thought to himself, how can I let this happen? How can this happen as I watch and keep silent? So he took a spear and killed the man and the woman, Moabite woman, and actually ended a plague that was ongoing because of the sins of the Israelites. You see, this reminds me of something that I have heard people say when they're praying. I've heard people say, God, make us grieve for the things that grieve you. Make us upset for the things that upset you. And this is exactly what happens to Phinehas. He got upset with the Israelites' actions because God was upset with the Israelites' actions. He got upset because God was being dishonored. And in the same way that God was feeling, he felt the same emotion that led him to do the things that he led. And he took action and decided that he will not stay silent. You know, this story makes me reflect on the many injustices that I have just sat and see and just done nothing about them. And the many ungodly constitutional laws that have been passed as I've remained silent and do nothing. I know it is easy to say, oh, people are passing laws, the government is passing laws, and the church is doing nothing. But you forget that the church is made up of you and I and everybody else. That it's so easy to blame and to put that responsibility on other people, apart from putting it on yourself. And sometimes I wonder, what should I do? Like, what do I do? Like, I'm just this one person. So what can I do? But this for me is a call for prayer. Even if I'm not actually carrying placards and spears and stabbing people, that I'm actually praying. And this is a call for prayer for some Phinehases to arise in this country. Some people who will not be silent when things that grieve God are happening. And maybe in taking actions and actually doing stuff that would stop these injustices and this ungodliness, that the ongoing plagues in this country will be put to an end. Plagues of rising prices for everything. You know, the other day I went to buy, okay, gosh, you guys, things are expensive. But plagues of rising things, of everything, plagues of recession that we are currently facing, plagues of diseases that we have no understanding of, plagues of corruption that seems to be barring this country, and many more ongoing plagues. I call you to pray for great leaders who will not stay silent as God is being dishonored. And if God lifts you to a place of authority, power, and influence, not just in this country, but in your family, in your school, at your workplace, and of course, in this country, be the Phinehas of that place. Stop the things that grieve God from happening in those places, and watch God stop the ongoing plagues in those places. I don't know what plagues you see happening in your family. I don't know what plagues you see happening in your workplace, in your school, but also you have also silently watched as God has been dishonored in those spaces. So rise up and be the Phinehas in the small spaces that God has given you. You don't have to be the leader, you don't have to be the president of this country, but you have a position in your family, you have a position in your workplace, you have a position in your church, you have a position in the spaces that God has placed you. Stop the things that grieve God. Be the Phinehas in those spaces and stop the things that grieve God from happening in those places, and watch God stop the ongoing plagues in those places. This is your girl Wakeji Kamore, and this has been Reflections by Wakeji Kamore.